She married the right man, but never forgot the wrong one. 16 years later, he returned with a promise. You may be in bed with him, but you will remember me. What would you do if the love of your life wanted to destroy you? If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the very end. You won't regret it. Subscribe to this channel and leave a comment telling us where you're listening to this beautiful story from. Let's continue. Isabella Beaumont always knew her life was a perfect performance. At 36, she had mastered the art of smiling at the right moments, of making the proper greetings at the parties of Georgia's high society, of maintaining the elegant posture her mother had molded into her since childhood. She was the ideal wife of Dr. Daniel Caldwell, a respected cardiologist in Atlanta, and the dedicated mother of Claire and Sophia, two well-mannered girls who attended the best private school in the city. Her home in the Buckhead neighborhood was a reflection of this constructed perfection. Every piece of furniture had its exact place, every flower in the garden grew with discipline, every meal was served at a precise time. The housekeepers knew her routine like a clock: breakfast at 7, her workout at 9, social engagements in the afternoon, family dinner at 8 o'clock sharp. Everything ran like a well-oiled machine, silent and efficient. But every night, when she turned off the bedroom light and Daniel was already asleep beside her, his breath heavy from overwork, Isabella felt an emptiness so profound it was a physical ache. It was as if something inside her was screaming in silence, begging to be released. She knew she wasn't truly living. She was merely functioning, fulfilling a role she had accepted years ago and from which she couldn't break free. Her marriage to Daniel wasn't bad, technically speaking. He was a decent, hard-working man who had never raised his voice to her or their daughters. He provided everything a family could need: financial security, social status, stability. But there had been no passion between them for years. Their touches were formal, mechanical. Their conversations revolved around family obligations, his professional commitments, the social events they had to attend. Love had turned into habit, and habit had become a gilded cage from which Isabella didn't know how to escape. That Thursday morning, as she drank her coffee alone on the veranda overlooking the garden, Isabella watched her daughters playing in the pool before school. Claire, at 14, already showed signs of the same natural elegance that ran in the Beaumont family's veins. Sophia, 2 years younger, still retained the spontaneity of childhood, but Isabella knew she would soon be molded by the same standards she herself had followed. Would they also feel empty one day? Would they also carry this weight of living a life that seemed perfect on the outside, but was dead on the inside? The doorbell rang, interrupting her somber thoughts. Carmen, the housekeeper who had worked for them for over 10 years, appeared on the veranda with a confused expression. "Mrs. Beaumont, a letter arrived for you, but it's strange. There's no return address, and the delivery man wouldn't speak to me. He just said it had to be delivered personally." Isabella frowned. Letters without a return address were rare, especially hand-delivered ones. She reached out to take the envelope, and her heart nearly stopped when she saw the handwriting. Even after so many years, she would recognize that script anywhere. The letters slanted slightly to the right, the stroke firm yet delicate, the peculiar way he made his lowercase s, Victor. Her hands trembled as she tore open the envelope carefully, as if it were a bomb about to explode. Inside there was only a thick cream-colored card with a few words written by hand. "Every time you make love to your husband, you will remember me." The world stopped. The coffee cup she was holding slipped from her hands and shattered on the veranda floor, staining her silk robe. The voices of the girls in the pool seemed to come from far away, muffled by the ringing that filled her ears. She had to lean on the table to keep from fainting. That sentence, that damned sentence that had haunted her for 16 years. He had whispered those words the last time they saw each other, when she was still Isabella Beaumont at 20, a virgin and in love, trembling with fear and desire in a hidden room of the old family estate. Victor Lancaster, the rebellious son of old Ambrose, the boy everyone in town considered dangerous, wild, unsuitable for a girl from a good family. But he had been her entire world for 9 months. 9 months of secret meetings, of letters hidden between the pages of the poetry books she read in the library, of promises whispered under the rain. 9 months in which she had discovered what it was to be truly alive, to feel every cell in her body vibrate with pleasure, to discover that there was an Isabella inside her capable of disobedience, of passion, of madness. And then he had disappeared. No, he hadn't disappeared. She knew the truth now. After all these years, he had been sent away, forced to leave, and she had paid the highest possible price. "Mrs. Beaumont, are you all right?" Carmen's concerned voice brought her back to reality. "You've gone very pale." Isabella quickly folded the card, hiding it in her trembling hands. "I'm fine, Carmen. Just a passing dizzy spell. Could you clean up this mess, please?" She ran to her room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching the card as if it would burn her skin. Why now? Why after so long? She had built an entire life on the rubble of that love. She had buried the 20-year-old Isabella so deep that she sometimes doubted if she had ever truly existed. But reading those words was all it took for everything to come rushing back with brutal intensity. His hands on her skin, the way he whispered her name like a prayer, the scent of his cologne mixed with the smell of rain on the afternoons they met, the feeling of being complete, of having found her other half, of being exactly where she was meant to be in the world, and the pain, the unbearable pain when she discovered he had left without saying goodbye, the loneliness of the months that followed, the marriage to Daniel 2 years later, arranged by her parents as a way to get her back on track, the slow, painful resignation of accepting that it had all been just a youthful dream. Her cell phone rang, making her jump. It was Daniel. "Bella, honey, I won't be able to make it for lunch today. Emergency surgery. Do you mind taking the girls to the dentist this afternoon?" "Of course," she replied automatically, her voice not sounding like her own. "No problem. Are you okay? Your voice sounds strange." For a moment, she almost told him everything. Almost screamed into the phone that no, she wasn't okay. That she had just received a letter that had torn down all the walls she had built around her heart. That Victor Lancaster was back, and she had no idea what it meant. But she was terrified and excited at the same time. "Just a little tired," she lied. "I slept poorly. Take a relaxing bath, rest a bit. We'll talk more tonight, okay?" "I love you." "I love you too," she replied, hanging up. But as she spoke those words, the only thing she could think of was the time Victor had told her he loved her, in the rain, with both of them soaked and shivering, not from cold, but from a passion so intense it felt like it could set the world on fire. She stood up and walked to the window overlooking the city. Somewhere down there he was. Victor Lancaster was back in Atlanta after 16 years. What did he want? Why now? And why that sentence, precisely the one he knew would destroy her? She closed her eyes and tried to control herself, but it was useless. Every word on that card was burning in her memory, reigniting feelings she had sworn were dead forever, because it was true. Throughout all these years of marriage, on the few occasions Daniel touched her with intimacy, she would close her eyes, and it was Victor who was there. It was Victor who caressed her skin, Victor who whispered in her ear, Victor who made her feel something beyond the emptiness. She had become an expert at pretending to be satisfied, pretending to feel pleasure, pretending that his mechanical, predictable touch completed her in some way. But deep down, she knew she was betraying them both, betraying Daniel for not being able to love him as he deserved, and betraying herself for accepting a life in which she never felt truly alive. The rest of the day passed in a blur. She took the girls to the dentist, went grocery shopping, organized dinner, helped Sophia with her homework, all on autopilot, while her mind was completely consumed by the card she had hidden in the back of her nightstand drawer. During dinner, Daniel talked about the complicated surgery he had performed. Claire complained about a math teacher. Sophia showed off a drawing she had made at school. Isabella smiled, made the appropriate comments, served dessert. The perfect family and their perfect routine. But when they finally went to bed and Daniel moved closer to her, kissing her neck in his lukewarm, predictable way, Isabella felt as if she were on fire from the inside, not with desire, but with an almost unbearable agony, because this was exactly what Victor had prophesied years ago. Every time another man touched her, she would remember him. Daniel made love to her gently and respectfully, as he always did, and Isabella closed her eyes, bit her lip to keep from screaming, and let her mind fly back 16 years to a time when love was pure fire, and she didn't yet know that some wounds never fully heal. When he finished, Daniel fell asleep quickly beside her, satisfied and tired. But Isabella lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what that card meant. Why had Victor returned? What did he want from her? And most importantly, was she prepared to face the ghost she had spent so many years trying to forget? Because one thing she knew with absolute certainty, that card wasn't just a nostalgic reminder. It was a warning, or perhaps a threat. Victor Lancaster was back, and her carefully constructed life was about to come crashing down. 3 days had passed since the card, and Isabella was living in a state of constant alert. Every phone ring made her jump, every noise from the street left her tense. She had discreetly searched for Victor online, but found only vague information. A successful businessman, a fortune made abroad, dealings in technology and investments. No recent photos, no personal details. It was as if he were a wealthy ghost. On Friday afternoon, as she returned from the gym, Carmen met her at the door with more unsettling news. "Mrs. Beaumont, there's a man here to see you. He said it's about the sale of the St. Clair's estate." Isabella felt her blood run cold. St. Clair's estate had belonged to the Beaumont family for 3 generations. Her grandfather had sold the land years ago during financial difficulties, but she didn't know who had bought it. She had never been interested in knowing. "Where is he?" "In the drawing room." "He's an elegant man, but there's something about him that makes me uneasy, you know. He has very intense eyes." Isabella didn't need to see him to know who it was. Her heart pounded as she walked down the hall toward the room. She stopped in front of the closed door, took 3 deep breaths and went in. He was standing with his back to her, observing the paintings on the wall. Taller than she remembered, or maybe it was the confident posture that made him seem larger. His dark hair now had silver strands at the temples, and he wore an impeccable suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. But when he turned and their eyes met, 16 years vanished instantly. It was the same gaze. Intense, penetrating, as if he could see through all the masks she had learned to wear. The same green eyes that had mesmerized her as a 20-year-old girl, now more mature, more calculating, but with the same ability to undress her without a single touch. "Hello, Isabella." His voice was deeper, more controlled, but it still sent the same shiver down her spine. She tried to maintain her composure, but she knew she was trembling. "Victor." Her voice came out weaker than she intended. "It's been a long time." He smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just found its prey. 16 years, 4 months, and 11 days. But who's counting? The casual comment about the exact date of their last meeting hit her like a punch to the gut. He had been counting. All these years, he had counted every single day he was away from her. "I heard you bought the estate," she said, trying to steer the conversation to safer ground. "I did, and I renovated it. It's very different from how you remember." He took a step closer, and Isabella instinctively stepped back. But some places remain exactly the same. The tower room, for instance. It still has the same view of the valley. The tower room. The place where they had first made love, where she had given him her virginity on a stormy afternoon, where they had planned to run away together before the world conspired to tear them apart. "Why did you come back, Victor?" "Business," he replied, and this time the smile was genuinely cruel. "And unfinished business. We have no unfinished business, don't we?" He tilted his head as if genuinely surprised. "Strange. I was under the impression we have a lot to talk about, starting with the 57 letters I wrote that you never received." Isabella felt the floor give way beneath her. "What are you talking about?" 57 letters, Isabella. 1 for every week I spent abroad for the first 2 years, all addressed to you, all returned, or—" He paused dramatically. "Intercepted. That's not possible. You disappeared. You never got in touch." "I never disappeared." His voice grew dangerously low. "I left because I was made an offer I couldn't refuse. $50,000 in 2008 was a fortune for the Lancaster family, especially when it came with the promise that if I ever came back, certain information about my father's business dealings would find its way to the FBI. The world began to spin slowly around Isabella. "What information?" "The information your current husband provided to your family, obviously. Daniel was always very observant and very loyal to the Beaumonts." Victor laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "You didn't know? He was already a family friend back then. He was the one who suggested I be sent away to protect your reputation. And he was the one who offered to take care of you after I was out of the picture. Isabella had to sit down. Her legs were too weak to support her. Daniel knew. Daniel had been part of it from the beginning. You're lying. Am I? Victor pulled an envelope from his inner jacket pocket. Recognize the handwriting? Isabella took the paper with trembling hands. It was a letter from Daniel to her parents, dated January 2009. His unmistakable doctor's script narrated in clinical detail the problem she was facing, the need for specialized treatment in the capital, and the suggestion that she needed a stable marriage to fully recover from the trauma. Trauma. As if loving Victor had been a disease she needed to be cured of. Where did you get this? Let's just say money can buy a lot of things, including the loyalty of people who hold on to old correspondence. Victor moved closer and sat in the armchair across from her. Do you want to know what else I found out over the years? Isabella couldn't speak. She just nodded, mesmerized by the horror of the revelation. I found out about the health retreat, about the 3 weeks you spent institutionalized, about the procedure they performed on you. His voice was laced with a cold, controlled anger. About our son, Isabella. The word son exploded in her mind like a bomb. She doubled over, choking on her own saliva, feeling as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. No, she whispered, don't talk about that. Why not? Because it hurts. Because you spent 16 years pretending it didn't happen? Victor stood up and began pacing the room like a caged animal. I had a right to know, Isabella. He was my son, too. You weren't here. The pain finally turned to anger, and she shouted louder than she meant to. You were gone. I was alone, scared, and my family said it was the only option. I was being blackmailed. For the first time, Victor lost control, shouting back. Your parents told me that if I tried to contact you, my father would go to prison. And then they told me you had asked me not to come back, that you were engaged to Daniel and happy. The silence that followed was deafening. They were both panting, staring at each other like two exhausted combatants after a battle. 16 years of pain, anger, and misunderstanding filled the space between them. They lied to us, Isabella whispered finally. They lied to both of us. They lied. Victor sat back down, running his hands through his hair. And we paid the price. Why did you only come back now? Why not sooner? Because before I didn't have enough power. His eyes hardened again. Now I do. Now I can destroy them all if I want to. Your family lost their fortune years ago, Isabella. The land, the investments, everything. They survive now on the allowance you and Daniel give your mother and Daniel. Well, Daniel has some very interesting side businesses that I'm sure the medical board would be thrilled to hear about. What do you want, Victor? Revenge? He was silent for a long moment, just watching her. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more intimate, filled with an emotion she recognized immediately. I want you, Isabella. I always have. These 16 years have been hell. I built an empire, made more money than I ever dreamed of, traveled the world. But every night when I closed my eyes, it was your eyes I saw. It was your name I whispered in the dark. Isabella's heart raced. The way he said it, the vulnerability hidden behind the mask of power, stirred feelings she had buried years ago. I'm married, Victor. I have daughters. I know. He stood and walked over to her, stopping so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. And you know what else I know? I know you don't love him. I know that every night you lie next to him and think of me. I know that when he touches you, you close your eyes and wish it were my hands. Isabella tried to stand to escape his dangerous proximity, but Victor placed his hands on the arms of the chair, trapping her without touching her. You've always been mine, Isabella, and I've always been yours. Not 16 years nor all the liars in the world could change that. That's not true, she lied, but her voice was failing. Victor leaned down until their faces were inches apart. She could feel his warm breath on her skin, could see every golden fleck in his green eyes. Isn't it? He whispered, and the closeness of his lips made her remember exactly what it was like to kiss him. Then why are you trembling? Why is your heart beating so hard I can see the pulse in your neck? Isabella closed her eyes, trying to shield herself from the intensity of the moment. But Victor didn't touch her. He just stayed there, close enough for her to get lost in his presence, far enough to torture them both. I'll give you time to think, he said, finally pulling away. but not much time. Some things can't wait another 16 years. Victor. Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock at the estate. He was already walking toward the door. Come alone. We have a lot to talk about. And if I don't come. Victor stopped at the door and turned to look at her one last time. The smile he gave was as devastatingly handsome as she remembered, but there was something predatory about it now. You'll come, he said simply, because you need to know the rest of the story, and because, despite everything that's happened, you still love me as much as I love you. And then he was gone, leaving Isabella alone in the room, with her heart racing and her mind in turmoil. Because he was right. Despite all the years, all the lies, all the pain, she still loved him. And that terrified her more than anything in the world. That night, when Daniel came home and found her quieter than usual, he asked if everything was all right. She lied, saying she was just tired. During dinner, she watched the man she had shared 16 years of her life with, and tried to see the traitor Victor had described. Daniel was affectionate with the girls, told jokes during dessert, asked about their day. He seemed like the same man who had married her, the same one who had sworn to protect and love her. Was it possible he had participated in the conspiracy that destroyed her youth? But when they went to bed and he tried to kiss her, Isabella pulled away instinctively. Because for the first time in years, the lie had become impossible to sustain. She could no longer pretend to feel anything for this man, not after seeing Victor again. "Are you sure you're okay?" Daniel insisted, concerned. "I'm just tired, honey. We'll talk tomorrow." But she knew that tomorrow she would be at St. Clair's estate, finally facing the ghost she had spent 16 years trying to forget. And she had no idea if she would come back as the same person. Isabella spent the entire day inventing excuses for herself about why she shouldn't go to the estate. She had commitments with her daughters. Daniel might get suspicious if she was late. It was dangerous to meet Victor alone. It was madness to revisit a past she had worked so hard to forget. But at 8:30 that night, she was in her car, driving down the dirt road that led to St. Clair's. She had lied to Daniel, telling him she was going to the movies with a friend. He hadn't even questioned it. Too absorbed in the hospital reports he had brought home, the estate was unrecognizable. Where a simple, somewhat neglected colonial house once stood, there was now a modern and imposing mansion. The architecture blended rustic elements with contemporary lines, and strategic lighting highlighted every detail of the facade. It was obvious Victor had spent a fortune on the renovation. 2 discreet security guards greeted her at the gate, as if they had been expecting her. One of them escorted her to the main entrance, where Victor was waiting on the porch, wearing dark trousers and a white linen shirt. More casual than the day before, but no less impressive. Wealth had changed him in ways she was still discovering. "I thought you might not come," he said, walking down the steps to meet her. "I thought so too," Isabella admitted, trying not to show how nervous she was. "But you're here." "I'm here." He led her inside the house, and Isabella was struck by what she saw. The rooms were spacious and elegant, decorated with impeccable taste that combined designer pieces with American art. Everything was sophisticated yet welcoming. "Impressive," she commented. "Very different from the estate I knew." "Money changes a lot of things," Victor replied, pouring 2 glasses of red wine. "But not everything." He led her to a study at the back of the house, with an entire wall covered in shelves filled with books and documents. On a dark mahogany desk, there were several stacks of papers organized with military precision. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to a leather armchair. "I want to show you a few things." Isabella took the glass of wine he offered and settled in, watching as Victor opened a drawer and pulled out a wooden box. When he placed it on the desk and opened it, she immediately recognized the contents, letters. Dozens and dozens of letters, all with her youthful handwriting on the envelope. "All the letters you wrote to me," Victor said, noticing her shocked expression. "A private investigator managed to retrieve them from the law firm your family used at the time. Apparently, they kept everything as evidence, in case they ever needed to prove I had tried to make contact." Isabella reached out a trembling hand to pick up one of the letters. The date was from March 2009, just 2 weeks after Victor had left. She opened the envelope carefully and began to read. "My dearest Isabella, I don't understand why you won't answer my letters. I know you must be angry that I left without saying goodbye, but you need to understand I had no choice. Your parents came to me and made me an offer that would have put my father in prison if I refused. They said you were better off without me, but I know that's not true. We're made for each other, you know that." The letter continued for 2 pages, filled with declarations of love, promises of return, and plans for a future that never happened. Isabella felt her eyes welling up with tears. "You wrote all these letters? Every week for over a year?" "After that," Victor poured himself more wine, his hand shaking slightly. "After that, I got the news of your wedding, and I realized that maybe your parents were right, that you really were better off without me." "I never knew," Isabella whispered. "I never received a single letter. I thought you had forgotten me, moved on." "Forget you?" Victor laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Isabella, I built an empire trying to forget you. I worked 18-hour days for years, made risky deals, traveled to places where no one spoke English just so I wouldn't hear anything that reminded me of home. And still, every single night, I dreamed of you." He walked to the window, looking out into the darkness. "Do you want to know why I really came back? It wasn't for business. It wasn't for revenge, though it is sweet. I came back because I found out you were never happy with him, and that gave me hope." "How did you know I wasn't happy?" "Because I paid to know." Victor turned to face her, and there was no shame in his eyes. "I hired investigators to send me reports on your life. I know you and Daniel have been sleeping in separate rooms for 3 years. I know you rarely talk beyond the basic needs of the family. I know you've been on antidepressants for 5 years, but you stopped last month." Isabella was aghast. The invasion of privacy was appalling, but at the same time, there was something disturbingly caring in the way he had watched over her from a distance. That's insane, Victor." "Maybe, but that's how men in love behave." He sat down again, closer to her this time. "You stopped taking the medication because you finally realized the sadness you felt wasn't clinical depression. It was grief. Grief for a life you never had the chance to live." His words hit Isabella like a punch to the gut because they were absolutely true. In recent months, she had begun to question if she really needed the medication. The sadness she felt didn't seem chemical. It seemed existential. "Daniel knows I stopped the medication," she said, more to herself than to Victor. "Daniel knows a lot of things you can't imagine, including about this meeting." Isabella's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your husband has people keeping him informed of your movements for years. The investigator I hired found out that Daniel hires the same services." Victor leaned forward. "He knows you're here with me right now." Isabella's phone rang at that exact moment, making her jump. It was Daniel. "Answer it," Victor ordered. "But put it on speaker." With trembling hands, Isabella answered the call. "Bella, where are you?" Daniel's voice was tense, controlled. "I told you I'm at the movies with—" "Don't lie to me." His tone was harsher than she had ever heard. "I know exactly where you are and who you're with." Isabella looked at Victor, who was observing the conversation with morbid interest. "Daniel, I can explain." "Can you? Can you explain why you're at Victor Lancaster's estate at 10 o'clock at night? Can you explain why you lied to me?" His voice was rising steadily. "Come home now, Isabella. Immediately." "Or what?" The question slipped out of her mouth before she could think. It was the first time in 16 years she had questioned an order from Daniel. The silence on the other end of the line was long and threatening. "Or the consequences will be very unpleasant for all of us, including our daughters." The call ended, leaving Isabella with the phone in her hand, trembling with anger and fear. "He threatened the girls," she whispered. "Daniel is not the man you think he is," Victor said calmly. "He never was. Do you want to know how he really made enough money to support your lifestyle? A cardiologist's salary, even a successful one, doesn't pay for that house, the girls' private school, the trips you take. He made investments. He laundered money for drug dealers for years, used the clinic as a front." Victor opened another file on the desk. "Want proof?" Isabella was starting to feel nauseous. Each revelation was a blow to her carefully constructed reality. "Why are you showing me this? Why are you destroying my life?" "I'm not destroying your life, Isabella. I'm revealing that the life you think you have is an illusion." Victor stood up and walked over to her. "Do you really believe you can go back home, pretend this conversation never happened, and continue living as if nothing has changed? I have responsibilities. My daughters. Your daughters will grow up and live their own lives. And you'll remain trapped in a loveless marriage with a man who actively participated in the destruction of the only true relationship you've ever had. Victor knelt in front of her armchair, forcing her to look him in the eyes. Is that a life, Isabella? Is that what you want for the next 40 years? She looked at the man who had been the love of her youth, and saw not just the rebellious boy she had loved, but the man he had become. There was a hardness to him now, a calculated coldness that both frightened and attracted her. What do you want from me, Victor? For me to abandon everything? To destroy my daughters' lives? I want you to choose to live for real. His voice grew lower, more intimate. I want you to stop pretending you feel nothing when you see me. Stop pretending you don't think of me every night when your husband touches you. Victor reached out and lightly touched her face, the first real physical contact in 16 years. Isabella closed her eyes, feeling a jolt of electricity run through her skin. I built an empire, Isabella. I can give you everything. I can protect you. I can ensure your daughters have the best of everything, even if you separate from Daniel. And what do you want in return? Victor smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in his eyes. You. Only you. As it has always been. Isabella opened her eyes and found herself lost in his gaze. For a moment it was as if they were 20 again, as if the rest of the world had disappeared. But then her phone rang again. It was Daniel, again. Answer it, Victor said. It's time for you to decide which side you're on. Isabella looked at the phone, then at Victor, then at the letters scattered across the desk. Her entire life was being rewritten before her eyes. 16 years of lies were crumbling, and she had to decide what to build on the ruins. With trembling hands, she answered the call. I'm coming home, she said, before Daniel could speak. Good. We'll talk when you get here. She hung up and stood, walking toward the door. Victor didn't try to stop her. This isn't just going to go away, Isabella, he said as she reached the door. Now that the truth is out, everything is going to change, whether you want it to or not. Isabella turned to look at him one last time. He remained in the study, surrounded by all the proof of a conspiracy that had shaped 16 years of her life. I know, she replied. That's the part that scares me the most. The entire drive home, Isabella tried to organize her thoughts, but it was useless. Her mind was a chaos of revelations, emotions, and memories. One thing, however, was crystal clear. Her life would never be the same again. The truth had been set free, and now she would have to learn to live with the consequences. When she arrived home, Daniel was waiting for her in the living room, sitting in his favorite armchair like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. And Isabella, for the first time in 16 years, was no longer willing to be judged in silence. Daniel didn't get up when she entered the room. He just watched her with an expression Isabella had never seen on his face, a mixture of disappointment, anger, and something that looked dangerously like a threat. Sit, he said, indicating the sofa with a sharp gesture. Daniel, I need to explain. I said sit. His voice was low, controlled, but it held an authority she had never noticed before, or perhaps had never dared to challenge. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap, trying to maintain her composure. But inside she felt like a child about to be punished. 16 years, Isabella. 16 years of marriage. I thought I had built something solid with you. I thought you had gotten over that youthful obsession. It's not an obsession, isn't it? Daniel finally stood, beginning to pace the room like a prosecutor presenting his case. Then what do you call secretly meeting an ex-boyfriend you haven't seen in over a decade? What do you call lying to your husband and sneaking out in the middle of the night? He sought me out. I wasn't looking for him. Oh, of course, he sought you out. Daniel laughed, but it was an unpleasant sound. And you, as a responsible married woman and mother, obviously told him you had no interest in reliving the past. Is that what happened? The sarcasm in his voice was starting to irritate Isabella. For the first time in years, she felt the urge to fight back. Victor told me some interesting things about the past, about how he really left town, about who helped orchestrate our separation. Daniel stopped pacing. For a fraction of a second, Isabella saw something flash across his face, surprise, maybe even fear, but he quickly recomposed his expression. Victor Lancaster is a criminal, Isabella. Always has been. Do you think he built that fortune honestly? Do you think a man like that is going to tell you the truth about anything? And you will? The question came out more defiantly than Isabella intended. Daniel stared at her for a long moment, as if he couldn't believe she had dared to question him. Watch your tone, Isabella. Or what? It was the second time that night she had asked that question, first to Daniel on the phone, now in person. And for the first time in 16 years, she really wanted to know the answer. Or you might find you have a lot more to lose than you imagine. The threat was clear now, undisguised. Isabella felt a chill run up her spine, but she also felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Courage. What happened in 2008, Daniel? When Victor left? Victor left because he was a bum who was causing trouble for a respectable family. Your parents did what any responsible family would do. With your help. With my help, yes. Daniel didn't deny it, and that surprised Isabella. Because I already loved you back then. Because I knew you deserved better than a thug who would end up destroying your life. You had no right to decide that for me. I had every right. You were blind, obsessed. Someone had to protect you from yourself. Protect? Isabella stood up, her anger finally overcoming her fear. Is that what you call forcing me to have an abortion? Committing me against my will? Arranging a marriage as if I were property to be traded? Daniel turned very pale. How do you know about that? Victor showed me the letters, all the letters you helped intercept. He showed me the correspondence between you and my parents. I know everything, Daniel. For a moment, the silence in the room was absolute. Daniel sat down heavily in his armchair, running his hands over his face. When he looked at her again, there was a weary resignation in his eyes. You don't understand what that man would have done to you, the life he would have given you. He comes from a family of criminals, Isabella. His father was involved in smuggling, money laundering, God knows what else. And you? What are you involved in, Daniel? The question hit its mark. Daniel stiffened in his chair. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the side businesses that support our standard of living. I'm talking about how a cardiologist can afford a $2 million house, private school for 2 daughters, international trips every year. You're delusional. Am I? Victor has proof, Daniel. Documents. He knows about the clinic, about the ghost patients, about the money you launder through medical procedures. Daniel stood up abruptly, his face red with rage. Victor Lancaster is trying to destroy our family. He's using you to get revenge for an old humiliation, and you're being foolish enough to help him. Maybe he's trying to save me from a life built on lies. Save you? Daniel laughed bitterly. Isabella, that man doesn't want to save you. He wants to possess you, he always has. And now that he has power and money, he thinks he can just show up and claim what he thinks is his. And am I not? Don't I belong to anyone? You are my wife, the mother of my daughters. You have responsibilities, commitments, that were built on lies. Daniel walked toward her, stopping very close, too close. Isabella could feel the tension radiating from him like heat. Be careful, Isabella. You're playing with fire. If you continue down this path, you'll end up burning much more than you imagine. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you, as your husband, as the father of your daughters. He leaned closer, whispering, Do you think you're just going to walk out of here and live happily ever after with Victor? Do you think I'll let you take my daughters? That I'll let you destroy 16 years of my life over some teenage fantasy? Isabella pushed him away, her heart pounding with fear and anger. The girls are my daughters too. Are they? Are you sure? Daniel's smile was cruel. Because by my calculations, Claire was born exactly 9 months after your health retreat, 9 months after the procedure you had in the capital. The world stopped. Isabella felt her legs go weak, as if the floor had turned to quicksand. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe you should ask Victor if he isn't curious about our eldest daughter. The revelation hit Isabella like a tsunami. Claire, her eldest daughter, the girl who always had something different about her, something Isabella could never quite identify. The green eyes, the strong rebellious personality, the way she had questioned authority since she was little. That's not possible, she whispered. You said, the doctors said the procedure. Sometimes procedures fail. Sometimes a pregnancy is further along than initially thought. Daniel sat back down, watching Isabella's emotional collapse with morbid satisfaction. And sometimes a frightened young woman decides not to tell her parents about a possible medical error. Isabella collapsed onto the sofa, her breathing ragged, trying to process the information. All these years, Claire had been Victor's daughter. Was it possible? Why did you never tell me? Because you didn't need to know. Claire is my daughter in every way that matters. I raised her, educated her. I love her as if she were my own blood, and she will never know any different. You have no right. I have every right. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes cold. Because if you try to leave, if you try to take my daughters away from me, I will tell Claire exactly who her biological father is. I will tell her that the perfect mother she admires spent 9 months lying about her own father's identity. I will destroy the image she has of you. The emotional blackmail was devastating. Isabella imagined Claire finding out the truth that way, coming from Daniel like a weapon, and felt sick to her stomach. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a man protecting his family. And you will stop this madness now, or the consequences will be terrible for all of us. Isabella stood, staggering slightly. She needed to get out of there, needed fresh air, needed to think. Where are you going? To take a shower, to try to process all of this. Isabella, Daniel called to her as she reached the stairs. Victor Lancaster is dangerous, more dangerous than you can imagine. If you keep meeting with him, you might just find out exactly how much. That night, Isabella lay awake until dawn, looking at her daughter sleeping in the next room. Claire, at 14, did have something of Victor in her. The high forehead, the shape of her chin, that determination that sometimes bordered on stubbornness. It was possible Daniel was lying, using Claire's paternity as another tool of control, but it was also possible he was telling the truth. And if it was true, Victor had a right to know he had a daughter. But that would mean shattering Claire's life. It would mean admitting she had lied to her own daughter about her identity for 14 years. As the sun rose, Isabella made a decision. She had to talk to Victor again. She had to know the truth about Claire. And more importantly, she had to decide if she was willing to fight for the life she had always wanted, even if it cost her everything she had built. Because one thing had become clear in her conversation with Daniel. She didn't know him. The kind, respectful man she had married was a facade. Underneath was someone calculating, manipulative, willing to use his own daughters as weapons. And if Daniel was capable of that, what else would he be capable of to keep his sham marriage intact? The next morning, as she prepared breakfast for the girls, Isabella watched every gesture, every word, searching for signs that her life had been a lie. Daniel came down for breakfast as he always did, kissed her forehead as he always did, asked about her plans for the day as he always did. But now she saw the performance. She saw the man behind the mask, and she didn't like what she was seeing at all. I'm going out this afternoon, she said casually. I need to take care of a few things. Daniel looked up at her from over his newspaper. What kind of things? Women's things. You wouldn't be interested. Lately, I've become very interested in everything you do. The threat was implicit but clear. Isabella smiled, but it was a cold smile. How nice to know my husband cares about me. Because if Daniel wanted to play this game, she was discovering she might be a better player than he imagined. 16 years of marital performance had taught her a thing or two about masks, and maybe it was time to use that experience to her advantage. Isabella waited until Daniel had left for the hospital and the girls had gone to school before calling Victor. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number he had given her the night before. I figured you'd call sooner, he said, without even a hello. I need to talk to you. It's about Claire. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Victor finally answered, his voice was different, more cautious. What about Claire? I can't talk over the phone. Daniel said you're dangerous, that you might be tapping our conversations. I need to see you. Come to the estate now. What if someone follows me? Leave it to me. I'll take care of it. An hour later, Isabella was once again driving down the dirt road leading to St. Clair's. This time, however, she had noticed a dark car that had followed her for part of the way, but which mysteriously disappeared when she turned onto the estate's private road. Victor had said he would handle it, and apparently he had kept his promise. He was waiting for her at the entrance of the house, wearing jeans and a black shirt that enhanced his green eyes. Seeing him, Isabella felt that tightness in her chest again, that feeling that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, despite all the complications. You're pale, he observed, guiding her inside. What happened? Daniel told me something last night. About Claire. About the possibility that she's... Isabella couldn't finish the sentence. Victor stopped walking, turning to face her. My daughter. You already knew. I suspected. His voice was tense. When I started investigating your life, I found out Claire was born exactly 9 months after you were committed. I hired someone to photograph her. When I saw the pictures, he walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a folder. Inside were several photos of Claire, leaving school, playing in their garden, talking with friends. Isabella felt a surge of rage and maternal protectiveness. "You had my daughter photographed?" "My daughter," Victor corrected. "And yes, I did, because I had the right to see how she was growing up, since I was deprived of knowing her." Isabella looked at the photos with new eyes, Claire laughing, and her smile was just like Victor's, Claire frowning in concentration, exactly as Victor did. Claire with those unmistakable green eyes that Daniel did not have. "My God," she whispered. "How could I have been so blind? Because you were manipulated by people who wanted you to be blind." Victor moved closer to her. "Isabella, I want to meet her. I want her to know who I am. I can't. Daniel threatened to tell her everything in the worst possible way if I try to leave him. He said he'll destroy the image she has of me. Daniel doesn't have that power. Yes, he does. Because legally he's her father. Because Claire loves and trusts him. Because a revelation like that coming from him as a weapon could traumatize her forever." Victor walked to the window, running his hands through his hair. Isabella could see the frustration radiating from him like waves of heat. "So what do you suggest? That I accept never knowing my own daughter? That I keep pretending she doesn't exist? I don't know. I'm still trying to process all of this. 17 years, Isabella. 17 years since they took me away from you. 14 years since our daughter was born. How much longer do I have to wait to have a family?" The pain in his voice was almost unbearable. Isabella moved closer, tentatively touching his arm. "Victor." He turned and pulled her to him in a sudden movement, kissing her with an intensity that left her breathless. For a moment she was completely lost, in the sensation of his lips on hers, in the familiar scent of his skin, in the way he whispered her name like a prayer. When they finally broke apart, they were both panting. 17 years, he repeated, resting his forehead against hers. 17 years of dreaming of this. "Victor, we can't." "Why not?" "Because you're married to a man who blackmails you. Because he threatens our daughter. Because the life you've built is based on lies and manipulation. Because it's too complicated. Life is complicated, Isabella. Love shouldn't be." He guided her to the sofa, but this time he sat beside her, maintaining the physical closeness that had been broken when they kissed. "There's something else I need to show you," he said, picking up another folder from the desk. "Something that might explain why our families are so determined to keep us apart." Inside the folder was an old letter, yellowed with age, written in a delicate feminine hand. "I found this when I was renovating the house," Victor explained. "It was hidden in a wall in the attic, along with other old documents." Isabella took the letter and began to read. "My dearest sister, I write these lines knowing they may be the last you receive from me. Ambrose Lancaster has gotten what he wanted. Our separation has been arranged, and I must leave tomorrow for New York, where I will marry Colonel August's son, as agreed upon by our families. But you must know the truth of what happened between me and Theodore Lancaster. What we felt for each other was not the youthful whim everyone claimed it was. It was true, deep love, capable of moving mountains. For 8 months we met in secret, planning to run away together to start a new life far from here. I was 3 months pregnant when they discovered our secret. What they did to us was cruel and calculated. They invented a scandal involving the Lancaster family in coffee smuggling to force Theodore to accept exile. At the same time, they took me to a convent in Georgia, where they forced me to give birth and give the child up for adoption. When I returned 6 months later, they told me Theodore had married in New York and never thought of me again. A lie. Years later, I discovered he had spent his life searching for me, believing I had abandoned him voluntarily. He died alone, never knowing he had a son. I married out of duty and carry this pain to this day. Our child is lost somewhere, unaware of their origins. I write this as a warning. There is a curse on this land, a repetition of hatred between our families that destroys everything pure. If ever another Beaumont and another Lancaster should fall in love, may someone have the courage to break this cycle. With eternal love, Maria Beaumont Castro, December 1952. Isabella finished reading with tears in her eyes. The similarity was frightening, as if she and Victor were reliving the exact same drama that had destroyed their ancestors. "Do you understand now?" Victor said. "It's not a coincidence. Our families have a history of conspiring against any union between a Beaumont and a Lancaster. They did it 70 years ago. They did it to us, and they'll keep doing it until someone has the courage to stop them. Maria Beaumont was my great-grandmother, Isabella whispered. My mother told me stories about her, but she never mentioned this. Because your family hid the truth, as they always do, but you have a choice Maria didn't have. You can break the cycle. How? Victor stood up and extended his hand to her. Come with me, I want to show you something. He led her out of the house, down a path that wound through the property. After a few minutes, they reached a small hill where a restored chapel stood, simple but beautiful, with stained glass windows that filtered the afternoon light. I built this in their memory, Victor said, for Maria and Theodore, for the love that was destroyed by greed and prejudice. It's beautiful. We'll get married here, Isabella. You, me, and Claire. We'll make the vows they never could. The proposal hit her like a lightning bolt. Victor, are you asking me to marry you? I'm telling you that you have a choice. You can continue living the life they built for you, based on lies and blackmail. Or you can choose to live the life you should have had from the beginning. And Claire. And Sophia. Claire is our daughter. She has the right to know the truth. And Sophia, well, I will love her as if she were my own, because she is a part of you. Isabella looked at the chapel, imagining what it would be like to stand there with Victor, finally free to live the love that had been denied to them for so long. It was a beautiful, tempting, almost irresistible dream, but it was also terrifying. Daniel will never let this happen. Daniel doesn't have a choice. Victor's voice grew harder. I have enough evidence to put him in prison. If he tries to interfere, I will destroy him completely. And what if he tries to hurt the girls first? He won't be able to. I have resources, Isabella. I have people who can protect you. I have enough money to ensure that Claire and Sophia have everything they need, regardless of what Daniel does. Victor hugged her from behind, his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. Think about it. The three of us in a house far from here, living as we should have from the start. Claire growing up knowing her real father, Sophia having a stepfather who truly loves her. And you finally being happy. It was a seductive image. Isabella allowed herself to imagine for a moment what it would be like to wake up every day next to the man she truly loved, to see Claire discover her origins with joy instead of trauma, to build a family based on real love instead of convenience. How much time do you give me to decide? Until the end of the week. She turned in his arms. And if I say no? Victor looked at her with an intensity that made her shudder. Then I'll leave again, this time for good. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I won't spend another 17 years dreaming of a life I'll never have. Either you choose to be with me, or I give up for good. The ultimatum was clear and final. Isabella knew Victor wasn't bluffing. This was her last chance to have the life she had always wanted. The question was she brave enough to risk everything for it? When she returned home that afternoon, Isabella found Daniel in the kitchen preparing dinner, something he rarely did. He smiled when she walked in, as if nothing had happened the night before. "How was your day?" he asked casually. "Productive," she replied, watching him with new eyes. "Great. The girls will be home in an hour. I thought we could have a quiet family dinner tonight." But Isabella knew there was nothing quiet about the situation. It was the calm before the storm, and she needed to decide quickly which side of the battle she wanted to be on when the war finally began. The week that followed was one of the most tense of Isabella's life. During the day, she maintained her normal routine, caring for the girls, running the household, attending social engagements. But every night, as she lay next to Daniel, she felt as if she was sleeping with a stranger. Daniel, for his part, had become overly attentive. He brought home flowers for no reason, complimented her appearance, suggested romantic dinners. It was as if he were trying to win her back, but Isabella knew it was just another form of control. He was marking his territory. On Thursday, 3 days before Victor's deadline, Isabella gathered the courage to do something she had been putting off: talk to Claire. She found her daughter in her room, doing math homework, completely oblivious to the bomb that was about to go off in her life. "Claire, can I talk to you?" "Sure, Mom, you've been acting weird this week." "Did something happen?" Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, studying her daughter's face. Now that she knew the truth, the resemblance to Victor was striking. How had she been so blind? If you found out that something very important about your life wasn't what you thought it was, how would you react? Claire put down her pen, frowning. What kind of thing? Hypothetically, imagine that your father wasn't who you think he is. Mum, you're scaring me. Are you and Dad getting a divorce? The direct question caught Isabella off guard. Why do you ask that? Because you barely speak to each other lately. Because you lie awake at night staring at the ceiling. Because Dad is acting like he's trying to convince you of something. Claire turned fully to face her. And because there's a man who's been following you for a week. Isabella's blood ran cold. What did you say? There's a guy in a dark car who parks on the corner when you leave. I thought it was just my paranoia, but yesterday I confirmed it. When you went to the grocery store, he followed you. Daniel was having her watched. The discovery was both terrifying and liberating. At least now she knew her suspicions were correct. Claire, if I told you that I met someone from my past, someone who could change everything in our lives, would you trust me? I've always trusted you, Mom. You're the most honest person I know. The irony of the statement almost made Isabella cry. She had spent 14 years lying to her own daughter about her identity, and Claire considered her the most honest person in the world. Then trust me now. No matter what happens in the next few days, remember that everything I do will be out of love. For you and for Sophia. Mom, you're freaking me out. Isabella kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in her teenage scent, fruit shampoo and innocence. I love you, Claire, more than you can possibly imagine, and soon you'll understand why. That night, Isabella barely slept. The next day was Friday, the eve of Victor's deadline. She had to make a decision, and every option seemed destined to destroy something she loved. If she chose to stay with Daniel, she would continue living a lie, depriving Claire of the right to know her real father and condemning herself to a life of emotional emptiness. But the girls would maintain their stability, their routine, their financial security. If she chose Victor, she would be risking a scandal that could traumatize Claire, facing a brutal legal battle for custody of Sophia and putting them all in danger because of Daniel's emotional instability. But she would also be choosing true love. She would be giving Claire the chance to meet her biological father. She would be breaking the cycle of lies that had destroyed generations of her family. On Friday morning, Daniel left for the hospital earlier than usual. Isabella took the opportunity to call Victor. Tomorrow, she said as soon as he answered. I need one more day. Isabella, please, just one more day. I need to get some things in order. There was a long silence. Then Victor sighed. All right, but this is the last postponement. Sunday, I want a final answer. You'll have it. That afternoon, when the girls got home from school, Isabella did something unusual. She suggested they order pizza and watch a movie together on the sofa. Daniel would find it strange when he got home, but she didn't care. She wanted to cherish this moment, the three of them together, laughing at a silly romantic comedy, sharing slices of pizza, completely unaware of the drama unfolding around them. At 9 o'clock, Daniel arrived to find the family gathered in the TV room. What's this party? He asked, trying to keep his tone casual. No party, just some family time, Isabella replied. Later, after the girls had gone up to bed, Daniel approached Isabella in the kitchen as she washed the dishes. You've decided, he said. It wasn't a question. Isabella kept washing the dishes, not looking at him. Decided what? About Victor. About us. I can see it in your eyes. Finally, she turned to face him. For 16 years, she had been afraid of this man without even knowing why. Now she understood that the fear had never been of Daniel himself, but of what he represented. A gilded cage she had accepted out of convenience and fear of facing the truth. Yes, she said simply. I've decided. And? I'm going to tell Claire everything tomorrow. About Victor, about the truth of her birth, about the lies that have propped up our family for all these years. Daniel's face contorted into a mask of cold fury. You will not do that. Yes, I will, and you're not going to stop me. I can destroy you, Isabella. I can make Claire hate you for the rest of her life. You can try, but Claire knows me. She knows I love her above all else. And when she knows the whole truth, she'll understand why I made the decisions I did. Daniel laughed bitterly. You think you're just going to walk out of here and live happily ever after with Victor. You think I'm going to let that happen? It's not your choice, Daniel. It never was. Oh, isn't it? He moved closer, his face red with rage. "I'll tell Sophia you're a liar. I'll tell your parents you're abandoning your family for a criminal. I'll tell the whole city what kind of woman you really are." "Do whatever you want," Isabella said, surprising herself with the calmness in her voice. "I don't care about other people's opinions anymore. I only care about doing what's right. And what's right is abandoning your responsibilities. What's right is to stop living a lie. It's to give my daughters a chance to grow up in a family based on true love, not convenience and control." Daniel pushed her against the sink, his hands on her shoulders, squeezing too hard. "You're not doing this to me. I won't let you humiliate me like this. Take your hands off me, Daniel. Or what? You'll scream, wake up the girls, show them what kind of mess you're making?" For the first time, Isabella felt a real physical fear of Daniel. There was something in his eyes she had never seen before, a barely contained violence that was dangerously close to the surface. "Let me go," she repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. Instead, Daniel squeezed harder. Isabella was starting to struggle when a voice interrupted them. "Take your hands off my mother." They both turned to find Claire in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, but with a determined expression on her face that Isabella recognized immediately. It was the same look Victor had when he was about to fight for something important. "Claire, go back to your room," Daniel ordered, without letting go of Isabella. "No." Claire walked into the kitchen, planting herself firmly between her parents. "I said take your hands off my mother. This is a conversation for adults." "This is a conversation about me," Claire interrupted, "because I heard everything. I know about the man who's been following Mom. I know you're fighting because of someone from her past. And I know there's something about my father that you're hiding." Daniel finally let go of Isabella, his face pale. "Claire, I want to know the truth," the girl said, looking directly at Isabella. "All of it. Now." Isabella looked at her daughter, Victor's daughter, and saw a courage that she herself had taken 36 years to develop. Claire deserved the truth. She deserved the chance to decide for herself about her own life. "All right," Isabella said, "but not here, and not like this." "Where, then?" Isabella looked at Daniel, who was watching her with the eyes of a cornered predator. "There's a place I want to show you. Someone you need to meet." And then she did something she had never imagined she'd have the courage to do. She grabbed her car keys and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Daniel yelled. "To break a curse," Isabella replied, without looking back. Claire followed her without hesitation. The car that had been following them since they left the house gave up halfway. Isabella had called Victor, and he had arranged a distraction for Daniel's investigator. When they arrived at St. Clair's estate, it was past 11 at night. Victor was waiting for them on the porch as if he knew exactly what was happening. When he saw Claire, his eyes filled with tears. "My God," he whispered. "She looks just like you at her age." "Actually," Isabella said, taking her daughter's hand, "she looks just like you." What followed was the most difficult and transformative conversation of Isabella's life. Sitting in the estate's living room, she told Claire the whole truth about the lost love, the pregnancy, the forced separation, the lies that had sustained her life for 14 years. Claire listened in silence, asking precise, intelligent questions, processing the information with a maturity that impressed both adults. When Isabella finished, the girl was silent for a long moment. "So, you're my real father," she said finally, looking at Victor. "I am, and I'm so sorry I wasn't there for all those years. If I had known..." "Would you have stayed?" "I would have fought to the death to stay with both of you." Claire nodded as if making an important decision. "Then let's get out of here." "What?" Isabella asked, surprised. "Let's leave, all three of us. Tonight." Claire stood up, determined. "Because if we stay, Daniel will try to separate us again. And I don't want to waste any more time on lies." Victor looked at Isabella. "Is that what you want?" Isabella thought of Sophia, sleeping at home, oblivious to everything. She thought of the life she was leaving behind, the legal complications that would follow, the scandal that would ensue. But then she looked at Claire and Victor side by side and saw a family that had been denied for 17 years. She saw the chance to break a cycle of lies and manipulation that had destroyed generations of her family. "Yes," she said, "that's what I want." They drove back to the city one last time, slipping silently into the house to get Sophia and a few essentials. Daniel wasn't there. He had gone out, probably to drink or plan his revenge. Sophia woke up confused when Isabella lifted her from her bed. "Where are we going, Mommy?" "To a place where we can be truly happy," Isabella answered, cradling her younger daughter in her arms. "What about Daddy?" Isabella looked at Claire, who moved closer to her sister. "Daddy will be okay," Claire said softly. "But we need to go." 3 hours later, they were on the road driving away from Atlanta. Victor had arranged everything: documents, money, a safe place where they could stay until the legal situation was resolved. When the sun rose, they were in a small coastal town, in a simple but cozy house with a view of the sea. Sophia had fallen back asleep, exhausted from the journey. Claire was on the porch watching the waves. Isabella and Victor sat together on the sand, watching the first sunrise of their lives together as a family. "Do you have any regrets?" he asked. "Never," she replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "I should have done this 17 years ago." "It doesn't matter, we're together now. And this time no one is going to tear us apart." 6 months later, they were married in the small chapel Victor had built on the estate, which was now their summer home. Claire was the maid of honor, Sophia the ring-bearer. The divorce from Daniel had been brutal, but Victor had better resources and lawyers. In the end, Daniel accepted a settlement that granted him supervised visits with Sophia and a sum of money in exchange for not contesting custody. The investigation into Daniel's illegal businesses resulted in the suspension of his medical license and a sentence of house arrest. He lost everything: his reputation, his money, the family he had manipulated for so many years. 2 years later, as Isabella was organizing the old books they had brought from the estate, she found a new letter tucked between the pages of a poetry volume. But this time, it was a letter Claire had written to Maria Beaumont, her ancestor. "Dear Maria, you said that if ever another Beaumont and another Lancaster should fall in love, someone should have the courage to break the cycle. Well, we did it. It wasn't easy and it cost a lot. But now we have the family you dreamed of and never could. Thank you for showing us that love is worth any fight. With love, Claire Lancaster Beaumont." Isabella smiled, carefully putting the letter away. Her daughter had understood something that had taken her decades to comprehend: that true love isn't a romantic fantasy, but a daily choice to fight for what truly matters. That night, as she lay beside Victor for the 1000th time since they had been reunited, Isabella thought of the sentence that had haunted her dreams for so many years. "Every time you make love to your husband, you will remember me." Now, finally, she was making love to the man she truly loved. And she only remembered how good it felt to be exactly where she belonged, in Victor's arms, in the life they should have had all along, but which they had won through the courage to defy an entire world that insisted on keeping them apart. The cycle was broken, the curse was over, and for the first time in her nearly 40 years of life, Isabella Beaumont was completely, absolutely alive.